Hi, this is Steve Gillmor. This is not a Gilmore gang. This is Backstage at TechCrunch Disrupt in New York, and I'm here with John Borthwick, the CEO. Are you the CEO of BetaWorks?
I am CEO and co-founder.
And how's that going?
So far, so good. You know, we're about 4 years into building BetaWorks, and it's going well.
You had something to do with the with Tweetdeck, right?
We had something to do with Tweetdeck. I mean, you know, BetaWorks, we do two things, right? So I often describe BetaWorks as a studio. We build things and we invest in things. And so Tweetdeck was something that we technically invested in. I say technically because it was, at times it was almost on the build side. We spent a lot of time with them, particularly in the early days, sort of working with Ian to refine the product.
This is Ian Dodsworth.
Yeah, Ian Dodsworth was the founder. But we, I love Tweetdeck, and you know, it has certainly established its position as the sort of pro experience for Twitter users.
So what do you think is this going to be a substantial acquisition like the Tweety one was, in terms of how Twitter sort of absorbs the leading applications in the category?
So this, Steve, you're assuming that there's a Twitter acquisition here.
Well,
so you're not even asking, you're not even doing the Schoenfeld thing saying, is there an acquisition? You're saying, how does it fit?
Well, it was reported.
Yeah, hypothetically, if there's an acquisition, you know, I think that there's an opportunity for Tweetdeck to continue to be sort of this pro experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's, yeah, which is sort of what you just outlined, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It is, you know, fundamentally Tweetdeck. I mean, what I thought was so interesting with it at the beginning was the column-based UI, right? Mm-hmm. And so I remember all the way at the beginning when we were first, you know, working on Twitter, using Twitter, with Twitter, building things on Twitter, and I would find myself consistently having all these tabs open, right, mm-hmm. On the browser, and in particularly for Twitter search, right? So I'd leave like 5 tabs open and then be using them to monitor. And so then I thought what we really need is we need a column-based UI. And about a couple of weeks after thinking that, we started looking for somebody to build something like that, and then one of us stumbled across Tweetdeck, mm-hmm. which had just been, it had launched a couple of weeks earlier, and Ian Dodsworth, a Brit like myself, had built it, and it was an Air client, and it was this completely stripped down column-based UI. Some people compare it to Bloomberg, but it's this full-on experience of navigating the Twitterverse. And if you remember back to those days, all of the other clients that took their genetic DNA from IM. They were all these diminutive single column clients, sure. that basically took the IM, the UI metaphor of IM, and applied it to Twitter. And Tweetdeck came at it completely from left field and said, no, we're going to go full screen experience of columns. And that, to me, is the core of what the Tweetdeck experience still is.
Well, it hit pretty big. You know, I remember going to conferences shortly after TweetDeck achieved, you know, velocity, if you will, and you could just see it on everybody's screen. It seemed to be the interface of record at that point.
It's a great interface.
But then, you know, this thing came along.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is the interface of record now?
So I think that that thing changes everything, right? And it changes everything because it's there's a new UI. It's a gesture-based UI. The devices, these devices, they have these really weird characteristics of being very personal and being very public, mm-hmm. right? I don't know of another computing device where people say, my iPad, and they, you know, I've heard people say, I'm going to go to bed and read with my iPad or cuddle up with my iPad, mm-hmm. and then people are also ready to share that, right? If I say, can I share your BlackBerry, that's a computing device you don't share. They're very shareable, they're very social.
Well, I'm not sure about sharing it. My kids want it. No, thanks. It's kind of personal to me.
But
I take
it
your point.
has, and it also is connected to our body, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the gesture-based interface, the accelerometer,
like,
the
this is
fact
what
that
I
you're
mean.
like, yes, exactly, all of that, and that's why you got all these remarkable videos at the beginning of the iPad where you had toddlers, playing with the thing. Why? Because we as human species have, that has been a gesture we've known from the beginning, right?
So how does that impact on the broader,
So I think
micro messaging universe?
So I think what's happening today is you see we're still in the early days of the early life forms of micromessaging, and I think what you're seeing is that there's a whole series of applications who are competing for your time and attention on this. Some of them are sort of dedicated vertical applications, some of them are aggregated, some of them are more media-centric, but they're all competing for attention in an app-based world.
All right,
and so I think that the UI and how you access that, that next layer of attention is going to be, there's going to be a business there.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. At Salesforce, we have an entrance in that category with Chatter, so we're pretty excited about it. I think we're out of time. Oh, I got one more minute.
One more question.
Excellent. So you can continue to answer my question.
Or I could ask you one about Chatter. But
go ahead.
So where does Chatter go? How does it evolve, and how does it relate to the other micromessaging streams out there?
Well, I think that we just acquired a company called Radiant6, which is essentially a monitoring technology for the social media universe. So that information is now going to be coming in, and what we do with that, how that's consumed and shared internally in a company, and then how a company responds to that and goes back out to the network. I think that those are the broad strokes of what we're going to see Chatter, integrating with external messaging services. The way Chatter works internally is as a kind of the journey of record, if you will, of institutional memory, and how you take that institutional memory once this kind of technology has its impact on the way people work, what comes out of that, and then how that's projected back out into the social system is, I think, ground zero to.
So I understand the Radiant6 acquisition now, because that way you framed it of taking the institutional memory and mapping that to the conversations that are happening out there,
that's what
the signal data.
That's what you got from what I said.
Yes.
Obviously, this is a work in progress, but I think that the broad strokes are that this is going to have an impact, just like what you're talking about in terms of the form factor. People have underestimated the iPad since pre-day one, particularly in its enterprise implications. And
Yeah.
I think what the genius of Chatter and Benioff's approach to it, which is why I'm at the company, is that he realized that this broad-based consumer social platform was in fact going to the enterprise big time, and it's what he now calls the social enterprise is what is emerging. So
It's fascinating that you can see that the tools wind it up.
Yeah.
So thank you, Steve.
I'm not used to being told to stop, but I'll do it this time only for the fabulous John Orland. This is Steve Gillmor. This has been John Borthwick of BetaWorks, and we're thrilled to see him emerging as a big player in the new world of micromessaging.